Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I in studio together. Not social distancing. Suck it. I mean, we're not like that close, but you could potentially spit across the table at me, land a perfect droplet in my mouth, and we're not wearing masks or anything. Can you believe it?
Wow.
I know, we're in danger. We are going to break down the 4 series that have already begun in the second round. We both have our predictions for the second round. We weren't able to get together before today, so a few games have been played, but I'll stick with my original guess on my series. I haven't changed anything, and actually the current outcome right now, which is 1-0 Vegas, 2-0 Dallas, 1-0 Islanders, and 1-0 Boston. It wouldn't change my prediction anyway. Like nothing is completely wrong now, even the amount of games. So
it might change the amount of games for me, but I'm going to stick with the original picks that I had, just because I don't want to be.
Yeah, I guess if you have Colorado in 6, then you're probably not picking that anymore. You might say 7 games or something. But okay, well, before we jump into that, we have to cover the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Pittsburgh Penguins making yet another deal for Kasperi Kapanen. The second time in his career he is traded, and it is the second time in his career that he is a Pittsburgh Penguin. Kasperi Kapanen essentially, we'll say, was traded for a first-round pick of Pittsburgh's, the 15th overall pick, and that's kind of the gist of it. Toronto also gets, they also get a prospect in Philip Hallander, who is said to not super fast, great hockey IQ, could end up being someone that makes the roster down the road. Not sure. Evan Rodriguez, we know he's fourth line guy at best. And David Warsofsky is 30 years old and has played 55 games in the NHL, so he's an AHLer. And Pontus Aberg, Jesper Lindgren going the other way to Pittsburgh as well from the Leafs. Both those guys, borderline NHL players at very, very best. Pontus Aberg played a little bit, and he's got a little bit of speed to him, but that's about it. So mainly Kasperi Kapanen for a first-round pick, which in my mind is a fantastic haul for a guy who's a third-line winger with 36 points in 69 games. Not bad. Like, he's a 40-point guy, but he is expendable for the Leafs. They have, when Nick Robertson is able to come in and play the way that he did in the playoffs, he looked pretty good. He'll get another offseason to train with the team, and he'll easily probably slot in there and replace Kasperi.
Yeah, I love this trade from the Leafs perspective because, again, you got a guy who's at best a third-line player for the Leafs, right? That's probably what his career would be given the depth in front of him. I didn't really ever see him moving any further.
Well, they tried him up the depth. Right. They tried him up at the top line with Matthews, and he just looked lost.
Right, and that's the thing for me. And on the flip side, you've got a guy named Jim Rutherford who drafted this guy in 2014, I think it was, 22nd overall. One of Jim Rutherford's 2 only first-round draft picks.
Yes, being with the Penguins.
Yeah, and so obviously he's all about this core of Crosby, Malkin, Letang. Like, let's go out and win with these guys now.
Rutherford said, Kasperi is a good young player that brings speed to our lineup and plays the way we want to play. Which with a lot of speed, that is true. He will fit in that way. Having previously drafted him, we know as a player and feel he can improve our top 6. And he just goes on to say that Aberg and Lindgren are both good young players.
Yeah, my concern, though, is if you can't work out well with the top-line guys in Toronto, how's it going to work in Pittsburgh, right?
And now I will say this, that Sidney Crosby is certainly a different player than Austin Matthews.
Sure.
I don't remember them giving Kapanen a whole lot of time with Tavares. It was more in there with Matthews. So I'd say he's probably, like, Crosby and Tavares are definitely more similar than Crosby and Matthews. But yeah, I mean, nobody fits super well with Malkin outside of Brian Rust. That's like the only guy I can think of that was like, oh, we found a guy for Malkin, Brian Rust.
Yeah, Phil Kessel did all right, but
Phil Kessel did fine, and they had to ditch him. And It'll be interesting to see if he can. I mean, if he goes in and he plays well alongside Sidney Crosby, then he's a steal, because it's hard to find a guy who can play alongside Sidney Crosby. But he's got a lot of speed. He's definitely an energy guy. Ultimately, though, I don't know if a team with Kasperi Kapanen in their playing on their top line is a very good team. What else do you like? You might struggle.
Yeah, Jim Rutherford's banking on this guy exploding, his potential just...
20 goals 2 years ago and 13 this last year in 69 games. So, could he maybe pot an extra 5 and be a 25 goal scorer playing alongside Crosby all year? Sure. I think a lot of guys are 20 goal scorers playing alongside Crosby, right? Or Malkin, whichever one. But you have to think from a Penguins perspective, they need to win now. They have no choice. Crosby, Malkin have maybe another year or two where they're both dominant, and it was clear that there just wasn't enough around them this year, and so it's a good move in that sense, because what's a first round pick going to do for you? At 15th overall, he's probably not going to, whoever that ends up being, not going to be a forefront in the league for another 3 years, generally, give or take a year, but this allows the Penguins some help now. I just wonder, who else could you have traded that first round pick for?
That was my question. Yeah, who? I mean, there's not a lot of guys out there that I guess you could find other players that are 40, 50 point players that you could easily go to other teams and be like, listen, we'll give you a first round and a 15th overall first round pick. Now
with a $3.2 million cap hit for 2 years, that is sure. Another consideration. Yes, you could go and probably get a 45 point guy for a first round pick, much like maybe like a Michael Granlund was got for. Was it a first round pick or was that a couple second round?
It was a first rounder, yeah.
But you have to consider he's also getting paid $5.5 million. So can you find a guy who's a potential 50 point guy? I'd say Kapanen's a potential 50 point if he's playing in the top 6 the whole year. But you need to be able to get somebody in your cap space hit. So
yeah, maybe you go to Anaheim, a team that's rebuilding, and you say, hey, Rickard Rakell, a nice 50-point player. He's got a couple more years at 3.7 and or 3.8, and you say, hey,
I think he probably costs more than a first.
Maybe, probably. He's more proven for sure. But definitely. I would rather
and a center.
Yeah,
can play center.
Can play, but I would rather go after maybe a guy like that who's got a little bit more proven track record behind him to produce. In my opinion, anyways, I'd rather just give up that first round and a little bit more.
Yeah. Anyways, I think people are really ragging on Pittsburgh, saying that the Leafs got a big haul for Kasperi Kapanen, and Kapanen isn't that great. It ultimately is a middle of the road first round pick for a guy with a great contract who is. If you think about $3.2 million, you basically pay $100,000 for every point. That's and even more so. It's not like I guess Connor McDavid. He's at about he's pretty close to 120 points when he's healthy, and you kind of drop down from there. So I think if you're getting really good value if you are better than or less than 100,000 a point. If that kind of puts it in perspective,
okay.
100,000 a point, he's above that, and so it's maybe not a bad buy in that sense. He at least and he can kill penalties too.
Yeah, so. And I'm not saying that Pittsburgh got taken on this trade, because I think this is one of those you have to wait and let it marinate for those couple years of his contract and see how it plays out, and see if ultimately if they do win another Stanley Cup, then you're like, oh my gosh, Jim Rutherford's a genius.
Yeah,
if this 15th pick turns out to be garbage, a player that never translate to an NHL player.
Hey, let's hope not.
Right.
As of now, I did a little bit of a trade tree.
Oh,
I went back. Because all this started when the Leafs decided that they were going to trade their 2 first-round picks for Philly Kessel, right? And Kessel gets dealt along. In return, the Leafs get Kasperi Kapanen and a first-round pick and a third-round pick and a couple other inconsequential players. Mm-hmm. I'm only going to talk about the consequential players. I'm going to just leave out, everyone else.
Leave out the crumbs.
Anaheim did draft Sam Steele with the first round pick that the Leafs gave them for for Frederik Andersen.
Okay.
So you can include him on this list because they eventually. So we're talking Tyler Seguin, Dougie Hamilton, Phil Kessel, now Kasperi Kapanen, Maxime Comtois, who was the Anaheim took with the third round pick they got from the Leafs for Frederik Andersen, and Sam Steele for Frederik Andersen and Pittsburgh's first overall pick in this year's draft at 15th overall.
Wow.
So you got a pretty good goalie, definitely like a top 15 goalie in the league.
Absolutely.
Top 15 goalie and a first round pick for Tyler Seguin, Dougie Hamilton, Phil Kessel, Kasperi Kapanen, Maxime Comtois, and Sam Steele. And that was my like, hey, I'm gonna spend 5 minutes and track this down. So who knows what else I could find if I really dug. I was
gonna say, go watch Steve Dangle and see his trade trees.
Yeah,
my God, Eric Lindros basically.
Well, some of the when you have a long time to go back into those trade trees,
20 years.
That's when you have a whole guy's career, it's pretty incredible sometimes. Okay, the Penguins, they also are expected to trade one of their goaltenders, which I think you actually mentioned that.
Yeah, I think
before Rutherford said it. You're like, they're going to trade one of these guys.
Yeah. You cannot hold on to two RFAs like that, guys. That one, you got on one hand one guy who is, putting up way better numbers than the other guy who won 2 Stanley Cups. So you've got options, right? You've got a guy who's got the pedigree, but maybe didn't have such a good season and more of a down year. But then you've got this other younger guy who had a phenomenal year and looked pretty good in the playoffs too. So who do you go with?
Yeah, I mean, your chances are you're going to get more for Jari.
I don't know. That's debatable,
maybe a pretty similar amount. Yeah,
that's really debatable because Jari doesn't have the.
He's more fresh in terms of like, all right, he's played well more recently.
Right.
Murray's had some injury problems. Yes, he won the cup, but he also won the cup now almost 4 years ago. It's hard to believe that it was almost 4 years ago.
And there are a lot of teams. The NHL more like I always look at the NFL, and the NFL is a lot more of a look what you've done for me lately type league. Whereas trading in the NHL is more or less, I see a lot of guys that, he used to be this, and I think we can get him back to that kind of form.
Especially a goalie.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, goalies can have swan songs all the time. And he's only, 24 or 23?
As young as he still is. So, and he's an RFA. So, again, I think a lot of teams will have that leverage of him being an RFA, but so will Pittsburgh because they can say, well, we want more because you're definitely going to get him under contract again. So,
and to me, it'll depend on like what can they get for each guy. If whoever they can get the better player for, I think that's who they'll deal.
Yeah,
because I would feel if I'm Pittsburgh, in the grand scheme of things, is there a big difference between the two goalies? Probably not. It's probably more so the system in front of them, anyways. So if the better player that you can get, preferably in my mind, if you can get a good defenseman, then you make that deal all day.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that's what Pittsburgh's probably best suited to go look for as a defenseman. And so one of the teams I look at is the Calgary Flames, right? I think the Flames got a lot of potential guys that they could deal, like a Noah Hannafin maybe. They've got some UFAs, but...
or Carolina even.
Yeah, or Carolina, a team that's... I don't know if they're necessarily
want to trade
disappointed
within their division, though.
Right, that makes it a little harder trading within the division. But when you look westward, I think a team maybe like Edmonton or Calgary, teams that maybe could give you a piece that you might be okay with. I think if you're looking Calgary's way and you say, okay, Noah Hannafin, we'll take him off your hands. You can take this goaltender, but we'll maybe throw something else.
There's no way in hell they're going to give up Noah Hannafin for a goalie. But Calgary also has a lot of cap space, so they're I think they have over 16 million next year, and they just have to re-sign Mangiapane and Jankowski,
right?
So, which won't be horribly expensive, but they're going to need to go find some defensemen themselves. So that's also are they going to be willing to trade Hannafin when they don't have to re-sign Brody, Hamonic, Forbort, Gustafsson? They have that too, but. One more Pittsburgh goaltender on a previous Pittsburgh goaltender. I'm sure that you saw the tweet from Marc-Andre Fleury's agent with this nice sword through his back playing goalie. And he wouldn't say whether or not he agreed with it. And of course, the agent took it down. But my goodness.
There's no way he didn't know about it. And I mean, he might have not, the agent might not have said, yeah, you're right. The agent was like, dude, I'm going to post this. Like, feel free to just pretend you know nothing about it. Yeah. I think they knew what they were doing because I think at this point, they're trying to set a precedent that says, hey, if you were planning on, Robin Lehner being your starter moving forward, then I want out. Like, I don't want to be here.
I mean, which is fine, but you don't have a choice.
Well, that's the other thing, too.
Like, Robin Lehner's a UFA at the end of the year, so the only way he's not going to be back is if he gets dealt. So, I mean, yeah, are you saying, hey, I want to be dealt if I'm not going to be the starting goalie? Sure. It might have made more sense to wait a minute before you did that.
That's the weirdest part. It is
and then Robin Lehner goes out and pitches a shutout.
Right.
Like, sorry.
That's a giant FU. Like, no, this is my net. I'm not like.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to go Fleury next game. It's just not going to happen.
I do think though, because Fleury he's known as such a nice guy, such a team guy. I think they'll just a lot of the team inside the locker room is probably just going to laugh it off, kind of make fun of him, rag him for a little bit about it, and then he's going to be like, what do you want to do? Like, he posted it, like, oh well, and then they're just going to move on. The team will anyway.
The team will move on.
Yeah. Whether or not management moves on is a whole other story, but.
I mean, yeah, is it kind of crappy? Sure, but hey, if you played better, you wouldn't be in this situation. So it is. Well, that's the thing. It's your own fault.
Yeah, it is absolutely a double-edged sword because on one hand you kind of resurrected and helped bring the city to the prominence it is, but at the same time, like you've been, like you said,
this
playing
is a
pretty
city
bad.
that fired their head coach 2 years after taking a brand new team to the Stanley Cup Finals because you were in 9th place. It's not like they were in last. They just were having a bad 25-game stretch, and they fired their coach.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, too. A brand new coach in here, Peter DeBoer.
Peter DeBoer is just known for benching guys.
Well, yeah, he will. But I'm just saying, like, he's not married to Marc-Andre like
that is true. Yeah,
Gerard
right.
Gallant was. So,
great point.
You like, what does he care? He can go in and play whoever he wants. Like, I want to play the guy who's playing better. And I mean, let's face it, Lehner's playing better.
Yeah, I mean, and Lehner's probably the better goalie. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is almost 37 years old,
at this
36
point.
years old, and Lehner is in the prime of his career. Here you go. I mean,
and if you got management saying, like, listen, we want this guy to be the future net after Fleury, then of course, like, Peter.
Yeah, if you're going to sign him,
they might be playing him for that aspect. But again, who knows?
That'll be fascinating to see if can Vegas. I mean, they only have $6.3 million in cap space,
but you move
with
that
Fleury
7.
on another 2 years at $7 million. Who wants Marc-Andre Fleury for $7 million a year?
I think somebody would take him at 5 for sure.
He can submit a 10-team no trade list. So there's 21 teams that he could be dealt to. I guess there's 20.
20, yeah.
So, yeah, if they ate 2 of those million, but if Lehner comes in here and does really well, which he already is, he's gonna probably want
the same amount of money.
At least 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he can sign a nice long, like 6 times 6 or
6, yeah.
Yeah. Especially with the cap being what it is and being stagnant, I think $6 million is probably.
And he's probably sick of 1-year deals,
maybe 5 or 6 years.
So,
yeah.
He'll take a pay cut to get a long-term contract, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, speaking of, we might as well just jump right into that series, the Canucks and the Golden Knights. First game, of course, the Golden Knights kind of put it to the Canucks and win 5-0 after an unexpected Vancouver win over the St. Louis Blues. Got to pat myself on the shoulder because I called that one. One of the very few that I called. And I actually did pick the Chicago Blackhawks over the Vegas Golden Knights to win in 6 games.
You did.
So that was my, I'm just going to be ballsy so that if I'm right, I can be like, what up?
Right.
And if I'm wrong, I can do exactly what I'm doing right now and just say, I mean, obviously I was, just going out on a limb a little bit, but anyways, so the Golden Knights destroy the Canucks in Game 1. Game 2 is actually later tonight, so it may have already happened, but I want to get your prediction on the series and just any thoughts that you may have on it.
Yeah, I think this is, at least after watching the first game, it's clear to me that Vegas is obviously the more experienced, the more dominant team. They went out and played big boy hockey, and we were pushing Vancouver around, right?
Oh my gosh, the things that the bench were saying to Elias
did you hear
Peters.
Did you hear the audio of Ryan Reeves just doing the chicken call at Antoine Roussel?
Yes.
That was just...
Dude, why did Roussel get a 10-minute misconduct for
he was
giving him
hugging.
a hug?
Yeah, because the COVID. They're throwing that in there now because they don't want guys getting...
Oh, that's actually a thing.
Yeah, they don't want guys getting up in each other's faces.
Oh, I saw people posting that, and I thought it was a joke.
No, I think that's a real thing.
I thought like maybe he said something to him that was, I don't know. Okay, so he actually got a 10-game misconduct because he violated social distancing.
Yeah, got the 10 minutes for that. So,
Justin, I'm afraid I'm going to have to give you a 10-minute misconduct.
Thank you. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, I expected Vancouver to push in that first round. I wasn't fully expecting them to win. But again, good on them. They have some really good young players, but I think now you're starting to see that, some of these younger guys, when they go up against a team that has a lot more offensive weapons than, maybe St. Louis does, because St. Louis wants to grind.
Well,
right?
and St. Louis's goaltending just was not very
Absolutely.
good.
And that's the thing. And now they've got to go up against good goaltending. They've got to go up against, in my opinion, a team that has three lines they can roll, much like St. Louis, but they've got scorers on each line. And so when you've got Stone and Pacioretty just working at the top of their game, I mean, had St. Louis maybe had Tarasenko, we could preach another story. But again, this is just a lot of offense and a lot of, firepower and speed that Vancouver has to try to figure out. And I'm not sure they have really the personnel to do it, and they really haven't figured out how to really, grind in the playoffs yet. So this is a great learning experience, and I think this is going to be a great series for them as a team developing long term. But ultimately, I think Vegas is just... I mean, all these guys basically have been to the Stanley Cup Finals, so they know the grind to go through this. Right. So it'll be interesting for Vegas too. I mean, I think, outside of Pacioretty and Mark Stone, like we talked about, the rest of the team's been there. They've done it. Robin Lehner looks phenomenal again. I love this guy, and he's one of my favorite goaltenders. I think I put him in my top 5. Can't remember off the top of my head. So. But
I will say that you're not going to shut this Vancouver team out for long. They're going to win some games. I would still pick the Golden Knights to win this series, but I think that Vancouver is going to have the ability to push it to 6. So I think they win a couple. They'll make it interesting, but Vegas is just too strong. I think that series against St. Louis wore Vancouver down more than maybe they would like to admit it.
Sure.
And Pettersson is just going to get honed in on here. I think Vegas just has there's a different hunger from this team. I think they see we could win this. Like, all we're gonna have to do is beat Dallas or Colorado, and the team that we're gonna have to play on the other side, we have in the Eastern Conference, we've got a good chance of winning. Like this is probably Vegas's year right here. If they can make a push and get through, they've got a great chance of winning the cup.
Yeah, and another reason too. I mean, Vancouver made it past St. Louis was they also got phenomenal goaltending.
Sure.
Markstrom was amazing. Now, can he sustain that and keep being amazing? I think he might steal a game or two, but ultimately I think there's just too much firepower.
Yeah, he's got to be better for sure.
Yeah, got to be
maybe
better.
Thatcher Demko come in. He made 5 out of 5 saves. No one could score on Thatcher. Just saying. All right, so you're picking Golden Knights in how many games?
I'm going 5 games.
5 games, okay. And I've got Golden Knights in 6. Colorado and Dallas. If you picked Colorado to sweep this series, you were horrifyingly wrong. Dallas is already up 2-0, and 2 pretty decisive wins, especially Game 2 down 2-0, scoring 5 straight, including 1 in the empty net, but 4 goals in the second period for the Dallas Stars, and they just kind of swept that first period under the rug, and they gave up 20 shots, and then they kind of got back to their own game and started to womp on the Avalanche. And does any of this have to do with the fact that they've had the Grubauer is hurt and is gone? 5 goals in both games,
Yeah, I don't know so much if it has to do with Grubauer not being in that as much as it has to do with Dallas just rolling. And they're playing so after that first round series, I kind of took another look at Dallas before, I made my prediction. Dallas, they were known for stifling you offensively. They played just a hard-nosed defensive game. They played this very systematic defensive game that made it hard for you to score, and that's why Dallas was where they were in the standings, because they were winning games 2-1. They weren't known for scoring, but now they seem to be playing this opposite, like, let's go hard, skate fast.
Let's go play with Colorado.
Right, kind of game. And not only that, but now they're getting depth scoring, which is what they didn't have in the regular season, right? They're doing it without guys like Sagan and Ben. And now you're looking at these two games that Dallas is up on Colorado. They were getting contributions from Ben and Sagan. Ben looked engaged.
And, like, Radulov, Ben, and Sagan are all averaging, like, I mean, Sagan's at 14-14. Jamie Benn 13-36, Radulov 13-22 through the first two games.
And that's the thing.
They're not playing.
Right. That's the thing.
They're playing like third line minutes.
Yeah, Goryanov, Pavelski, these guys are scoring for Dallas, where in the regular season they weren't really doing it. And so they don't have to go and ride Ben and Sagan for 20 minutes a night. Now you can rely on these guys.
Pavelski's played 17-35 average through the first couple of games.
Like, looking good on the power play, looking good on the penalty kill. And that's the thing, too. I watched in that second game, Colorado, 5-on-3. They had 8 power plays. They couldn't get it done. I mean, yes, they did score, on the power play, but they had opportunities, and they just, outside of that first period in game number 2, they just looked to be kind of shut down, and they looked to just go back and forth with Dallas. And I think, the way Dallas is playing depth-wise, where Colorado, they're just, right now Colorado is all McKinnon and Rantanen. They're not getting anything else from anybody. So if they want any chance in the series, Kadri's got to come back and score.
Yeah, because Kadri was so good in that series against Arizona, and through 2 games, he's got his 1 assist.
They need more.
Granted, and it's 4 shots through 2 games, whereas in one of those games against Arizona, I think Kadri had 10 or 11 shots the whole game. Like,
and the biggest handicap for me for Colorado right now is losing Eric Johnson. He is a difference maker, because I look at Colorado's defense and I see Makar, Girard, all these guys that are just fast, offensive-minded guys. You don't have that stalwart back there on D to say, okay, this guy's the rock. He can partner with whomever, Cale Makar, and Makar can go do his thing, but we know we've got Johnson back here to hold the fort down, and we don't have to worry. They don't have that now.
Yeah. What's happening to Mesnikov, man? he's down 8 minutes a game is what he's getting. Barely, or just under 9. He it's weird. And then, I mean, even Nichushkin's getting more minutes than him.
Ooh.
Nichushkin still maybe he'll get his revenge against Dallas for cutting him. But yeah, there's just Colorado just not getting anything outside of that top unit, really. I mean, outside of those top 3 guys, you've got 4 assists.
Wow.
That's 3 even strength assists from the rest of the team. So not even goals. I mean, yeah, you only have 3 goals total so far in the series, but so what are your thoughts on this series? What's your prediction?
So my original prediction was Colorado, and I'm sticking with that because they are my, the team I chose originally before the series started. However, I think given what Dallas has done, it kind of changes my mindset. I originally thought Colorado would sweep. That was my mindset.
Wow. Okay.
I was picking, not necessarily because I thought they were that much better.
That was a joke when I said that in the beginning, but that's fine.
Not because I thought they were that much better than Dallas, but just because I always look for just one like upset, one weird series that sweeps where you're like, man, I wouldn't have picked that at all, especially the way Dallas was playing the first round. So I thought, okay, that would just be fun to throw that in there. But now that they're down 2-0, I can't say that anymore. So I'm going 7 games for this series.
Okay, it's weird because I have Dallas sweeping. So no, I don't actually. No, I don't have Dallas winning this series, but they do look pretty decent. I want Colorado to win because I want to see Colorado Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think they still have a good shot. It's going to be a lot harder, you're right, without Eric Johnson, even without Grubauer. I think he's the better goaltender ultimately. If we're going through a 7-game series, I want him over Francoeur. But I'll still say Colorado. I'm going to say in 7 because I picked them to begin with, even though now I want to say Dallas in 6.
And I will say, too, I think this one will definitely go 7 because first round we didn't have a single 7-game series.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So we're going to get one now.
After the insane overtime game that we get to start the first round, so tight and close, you think, oh, we're definitely getting some 7-gamers. And I mean, we really, there was 8 series in the first preliminary round, and then 8 series in the first round. Out of those 16, we've had 1 series go the distance.
Yep.
Okay, on to the Eastern Conference, the Islanders and the Flyers. The Flyers dropping the donut in Game 1, losing 4-0. It is the first time in Islanders history that a goaltender has back-to-back shutouts in the playoffs. Doing it up. The New York Islanders.
Yeah, Varlamov looks pretty good.
He does. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say my big concern, I felt bad for Carter Hart because, at what point can you let this guy get shelled the way he got shelled in Game 1? The Islanders looked like a machine they were rolling through. Carter Hart did everything he could, and I think, again, this might be too much for him. At some point, you might want to consider putting Brian Elliott in just to give him a little relief. But
you're not going to put Brian Elliott
I don't know.
in. Not unless you want to lose that game.
Listen, I will say Brian Elliott is the league leader in goals against average in the playoffs, so suck it.
Because he came in for a minute?
Right. 1 game.
In the exhibition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other concern for me, if I'm a Flyers fan, is Claude Giroux. Hasn't scored a goal yet, playing third line left wing minutes. This guy is supposed to be elite. And now I know we saw in round 1, Philadelphia got stifled by a Claude Julien team that basically learned how to take your weaknesses and shove it back in your face. And by playing a hard-nosed defensive system with speed, Philly wasn't really able to be as successful in the regular season as they were in that series. And so, obviously, the hottest team in the regular season in the last 25 games coming in, they looked pedestrian against Montreal, a team that I expected them easily to sweep over.
Sure.
Again, if you can't get guys like Claude Giroux contributing, guys like, JVR sitting in the bench, sitting in the press box.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah. Is that guy going to come in and you're going to get something out of that $7 million man? Because they need to at this point. They need a spark. They need something.
Voracek, Kevin Hayes. Kevin Hayes actually looked okay. He was probably the one guy who was he was doing something. Him and Konechny, Konechny led the team in shots at least. That's something, but
something.
Yeah, they're going to have to do much better against this Islanders team that will happily let you take shots from the outside, and they're just going to wait for their opportunities. And yes, the Flyers did outshoot the Islanders in Game 1, but their high danger opportunities far exceeded that of the Flyers. So this series, I'm leaning Islanders anyways, is where I was leaning. I thought that this series would be quite close though, because I think the Flyers will answer back. I mean, they have a lot of experience. They have that nice mix of veterans and young players. So I think I'm going 7 games in this, but Barry Trotz's experience in Game 7s will ultimately be what puts them over the top. And frankly, I think that it was his coaching that won them Game 1.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, before the series started, I had picked the Islanders, and I'm sticking with that. However, after that, and I want to stick with the same amount of games too, because after seeing Philly in that first round, I was not super impressed with what they did, and I was super impressed with what the Islanders were able to do in their first round. And so I'm picking a sweep.
Wow. Okay, a sweep of the Flyers. That's a gutsy call. Okay, let's go to the last series, the Bruins and the Lightning. Bruins take a tight first Game 1, 3-2, and I'm going to throw my prediction out here in the beginning because I have the Tampa Bay Lightning winning this in 7 games. I have 3 series going to 7 games in my predictions, and 1 going to 6 because I love long series.
There you go.
But that Game 1, I thought that Halak played fantastic. He played, in my mind, over his head. Vasilevsky had a softie. And I mean, Victor Hedman's the one scoring both your goals for Tampa. I think that once the big boys get going for the Lightning, it's ultimately going to be too much for the Bruins, and the Bruins will begin to slow down here a little bit more. So,
yeah,
it's going to be a tight series. It's going to go 7 games, but I think that Tampa has the depth to sustain this through a 7-game series. I think that Halak's a nice goaltender. I think this goaltending matchup will, in the end, be too much for the Bruins, too.
Yeah, I agree with you. I picked
different story if there's Rask, but
yeah, I picked Tampa Bay to win this one too. I'm going in 7 as well. It'll be interesting with McDonough out for the next 2 games. They said, what they can. Obviously, they're going to ride Hedman a ton. He'll play 30 minutes, I'm sure, every single game that McDonough's out now. But ultimately, I'm more concerned up front. Like, is Tampa Bay's forward prowess going to overtake Boston's at some point? And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. Is Tampa's going to get back in this because they have too many good players up front versus when I look at Boston's forwards. And if you want to go line for line, I think ultimately, I think Tampa's got the depth to do it. And, if they can get, decent goaltending and they can get, a couple other guys outside of Hedman to contribute on the back end, I think that Tampa's got a real good shot at this.
Yeah, I'll say that my prediction changes if Steven Stamkos doesn't return at all.
Sure.
Didn't play in game 1, and I guess it was obvious.
Now, what's the word on him? I honestly haven't looked at the injury.
He's not available right now. He's rehabbing. When he's going to be available, I will let you know. There's no further updates. It's pointless to keep asking about it, says John Cooper.
All right.
So that was yesterday that he said that. So, he's not going to be available for game 2. Doesn't sound like he's there for game 3 or 4. Somebody else is going to have to do this. This is Kucherov's time. You don't want to be the next summer off. That's a bad title to hold.
Yeah, I think ultimately you're going to need guys like Killorn, Tyler Johnson to step up and take hold of this series for this team. Because if Stamkos is, a little further off, a few games out, even if he doesn't show up in the series, ultimately they're going to need depth. Because
Braden Point will be better too.
Yeah, Point and Kucherov, I think, will find their game. They'll find their rhythm and ultimately put up numbers for this team, just like Pasta and Bergeron will.
We got Blake Coleman scoring a goal or not? Doesn't like scoring, apparently.
Doesn't like. Yeah. So I think if Tampa wants a shot at this, they're going to need some production there from those guys.
Yeah, and can they start, like we saw in that series against Columbus, we saw Tampa's ability to match Columbus's size and their grit. We need to see that here game 2 and beyond from the Lightning, because I think if you can pour it on the Bruins, that will throw their game off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enough because of their lack of depth. I think if you can put the hurt in on that top line, if you can ever touch them, and not that they're never gonna, no matter how angry you get Brad Marchand, they'll never call anything on him. So.
Right.
But okay, so you're picking Lightning in 7, as am I.
Yeah, we ultimately have the same 4 teams. Moving on.
Yeah, what the heck? We'll live and die together here. There was one more thing that popped up in my head as we were talking there, and the coach in Washington, Todd Reardon, fired, and I wanted to throw out, because we were talking about Barry Trotz, and it's what made me think, how hard are they regretting not opening up the pocketbooks for Barry Trotz?
Yeah,
why didn't they pay this guy what he deserved? Like, he goes to the Islanders and is
embarrassing them with lesser talent.
Well, yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's doing what he could have been doing in Washington with lesser talent. Obviously, I think he does have some younger pieces, some faster pieces, but he could have worked it in Washington because he's that good of a coach. But I heard a lot of reports that there were, I don't want to say a lot, but I heard like half the locker room didn't really care much for him in Washington. And that played into the piece. Now, whether or not Ovi liked him or not, I think Ovi and maybe Backstrom maybe are like the 2 guys that I would say in that locker room, like if they're cool with them.
Guys didn't like Scotty Bowman either.
No, that's very true. But
nobody cared because he won all the time.
Exactly. And I think if a guy like Ovi or Backstrom comes in and says, no, we like this guy, we want him to stay, screw what all these other guys say. I think management would be stupid to be like, Verana doesn't like him, so nope, okay, bye. Yeah. No, that would be stupid and foolish. And I ultimately do think it mostly came down to money.
Brian McClellan too, and him didn't really get along, so that's the other side of it. And Lou Lamoriello, obviously spotted the coach. I mean, think who are the last two people that Lou Lamoriello has hired? Mike Babcock and Barry Trotz.
Guys that don't like their coaches.
And Todd Reardon, everyone loved him. And look how it worked out.
Right. Sometimes you just can't have that player's coach. You got to have a...
Yeah.
And look, I think Lou Lamoriello... And it's funny because everybody keeps ragging on the Islanders like they don't like it because they're bringing back that New Jersey style of, defense where they're just shutting guys down.
Yeah.
And it cracks me up because I'm like, yeah, okay, we're trying to... A lot of NHL teams try to model who that last cup winner was. Like, let's go fast. Let's score a lot of goals. But, oh, wait... Defense can still win. Like, you can still play hard and shut it down.
Was a great mixture of that, I think. So, yeah, I think out of any team that's won the cup in the last since Anaheim won it, I think that they remind me most of Anaheim with St. Louis. Like just that a team full of skill, but could grind it out and could play all these different ways of hockey. Yeah. I mean, you had Getzlaf as a young guy and.
Niedermeyer, Pronger, those guys, would just shut you down.
That was it right there. All right, well, that is our show. You can let us know who you think is going to win in the second round. You can tweet at us at OT Hockey Talk. And until the next time, our next show will probably be somewhere towards the end of the second round. And it sounds like teams are going to keep on dealing while these other teams are playing, which is nice. I feel like that doesn't really happen normally in the playoffs.
No.
So we'll see what else happens behind the scenes here. Teams obviously feeling the crunch, knowing that this offseason is going to be strange, and so the quicker you can get some of this stuff done, the better. And we'll follow everything that's happening. Any last words, Justin, before we sign off?
Yeah, I'm hoping for more big trades while the playoffs are going on because it just gives me something more to just watch for, right? Because obviously we know as soon as the playoffs are over with, like the offseason stuff's going to start. The draft, free agency, like it's going to happen quick.
It's going to be on steroids.
Yeah, get the pieces you want now and get it done. So I'm hoping for a big trade here. I'm hoping maybe Arizona deals Taylor Hall's rights, which would be fantastic.
There you go. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if people deal UFA's rights.
Right.
That will be fascinating. All right, well, we'll keep you posted as we go and analyze everything as it happens. Follow us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. We will talk to you guys soon.